Well, hello there, and thank you for joining me for a special edition of Telile 24/7. I'm your host, Adam Cook. In just a little while, I'll speak to the Mayor of Port Hawkesbury, Brenda Chisholm-Beaton, about concerns the Town Council has about delayed responses from the provincial government about the realignment of the lanes and other aspects of Reeves Street. But we're devoting most of Telile 24/7 this week to a discussion about green hydrogen and renewable energy. This is a big year for green hydrogen developments in the Strait, with movement going forward on the Bearhead Energy Project and on Everwind Fuels, as well as a new smaller green hydrogen development at Port Hawkesbury Paper. In the middle of all this, two municipal leaders who co-chair the Strait Area Offshore Wind Task Force have taken part in conferences on wind energy and renewable energy sources in Europe. So we're going to get some perspective on what they learned and also why the Cape Breton Partnership has been so involved in green hydrogen development here in the Strait. So I've convened a panel discussion that features participation from Port Hawkesbury Mayor Brenda Chisholm-Beaton, Richmond Warden Amanda Mombourquette, and the CEO of the Cape Breton Partnership, Mattheis. Here's our discussion right now. The development of green hydrogen and green ammonia in the Strait marks a real watershed moment for not only renewable energy in Nova Scotia, but for economic development in Nova Scotia. Is that why the Cape Breton Partnership wanted to take a lead role in doing these types of things? For example, you folks have not only had a presence at international conferences on wind energy and green energy, but you've also, as an organization, provided some of the funding for others to go as well. So what can you tell me about the importance of this to the Cape Breton Partnership and to Cape Breton Island as a whole?
First, we're the Cape Breton Partnership is a partnership. So primarily, we at our core definitely private sector investors contribute both time and some money to have our core organization. But through our regional enterprise network partners, the province of Nova Scotia, municipalities across Cape Breton, and First Nations, we act as the economic development arm of many all of the municipalities and a partner with First Nations. And so whenever I say we've helped fund things, which we actually act as a catalyst for others to be supporting this financially. So in this instance, though, the Cape Breton Partnership Board of Directors did approve my own travel from those private sector investors to go. They see it as a great opportunity. But with Martin being the Economic and Innovation Development Officer in the Strait area, his role with the municipality of the County of Richmond, of which, of course, Mombourquette is Warden, and in the town of Port Hawkesbury, it was critical for the Strait area to be up to speed on things that we're going to talk about today. What is the opportunity? How do regulations play? What does the private sector think? What does the future hold? And what opportunities can our local supply sector, service sector, labor force, how can they benefit from these things? And so we see this as a potentially a transformational industry in the Strait region, of a similar scale to what is now Port Hawkesbury Paper has done. A large with key differences that I'm sure we'll get into. However, it's a large facility, industrial facility that supports a large forestry sector that in turn supports a lot of harvesters, a lot of mechanics, and a lot of supplies that go into that enterprise that provides paper not only domestically but internationally. And so while there is key differences, there's a great opportunity. The resource for the Strait region in terms of offshore wind is tremendous, as we learned in these some of these excursions, but also through just simple Zoom calls, which don't cost much at all, and relationships that were built in those trips, and is unique in its availability of industrial land. It's unique in its deep ice-free harbor, and so these are all key considerations that we've been able to prove through great conversations with private sector and with other governments who've spent 30 years developing this industry in other parts of the world, and we're really excited to support specifically the Richmond County and Port Hawkesbury, but really we see this supply chain stretching across the province, frankly, as you mentioned, and a game changer potentially for people who wish to be employed here, grow their businesses here, and live here in the Strait region.
Now, you mentioned Martin Thompson, who is, of course, the Innovations and Economic Development Coordinator for Richmond County and the town of Port Hawkesbury. We've had him on our airwaves here at Telile Community Television. He sat in our studio with me, and we've talked a bit about some of the observations he's seen both in his native Denmark, but also in Scotland, where he worked for a few years in terms of wind energy, green hydrogen, and green ammonia development over there. I'll ask you, Tyler and Amanda, feel free to jump in if you like. What has it meant to have Martin Thompson's perspective in this regard as Richmond County, the town of Port Hawkesbury, and Cape Breton in general are entering into this new green hydrogen wave?
Well, I'll quickly say, and I'll pivot swiftly to the Warden. We're very excited. We're very fortunate as an organization, as a region, to be able to attract skilled professionals such as Martin, not only in this specific role, but in other roles. We are moving to a reality that is more about how do we attract the right people to our region to fill jobs that are unfilled, and Martin's a good example of that. His expertise in community impacts of green energy has been very helpful, and his ability to understand what communities wish to see when they're faced with these large industrial operations. They are green energy. They're a great and an essential part of a shift towards green energy and climate action, but they no doubt have impacts on communities. And we can learn from, like I said, places like you mentioned, Scotland and Denmark, that have had these longer terms of taking advantage of these opportunities, and we can avoid some of the pitfalls that they've seen as they've gone down this road before. But,
having someone like Martin who has seen this, this kind of economy, a green economy in action, is really, it's highly valuable, so it helps us to kind of be more open to the idea and to understand how we can better navigate what's right for our communities too. And it's fantastic to see these types of industries bringing our expats back home, and also bringing new people to our region who have that kind of experience. So, but two things are happening right now, and it's the industry is still in its infancy, and it's wonderful to see.
Well, I want to ask you, Amanda Mombourquette, Martin Thompson was with you, as was Tyler Mattheis and Mayor Brenda Chisholm-Beaton of Port Hawkesbury, the co-chair of the Strait Area Offshore Wind Task Force, at the Wind Europe conference that took place in Denmark back in April.
The trip that we took to Copenhagen was for Wind Europe. And that was just a culmination of all of the minds and stakeholders and industry partners, subject matter experts with regard to offshore wind and green marine renewable energy, green hydrogen, and in all of the subject matter experts, of course, were from education, supply chain, workforce, just even people that are making little parts for a wind turbine blade. So, I mean, there was a huge opportunity for engaging with the people who are entrenched in the offshore wind industry on that side of the world. And also just to the learning opportunity was massive, as well as just being able to kind of network and meet people and make connections and take those connections back to the Strait area and to Cape Breton, and to be able to kind of continue dialogue. So the Copenhagen trip was really, so the Wind Europe definitely happens on an annual basis, with other smaller opportunities in terms of the work that they do and the opportunities to engage that they have on offer.
Yeah, I think honestly, first and foremost is that, although this is new to us, it's not brand new business, right? And in a global context, I think, Tyler, you mentioned earlier, we have the opportunity here to learn from 30 years of activity in places like Northern Europe. And so that's, to me, was why the Denmark conference was so incredibly valuable. When I think about the key takeaways from that, there was really a huge focus from the delegates and from the presentations on education and research, how that is so critically important to the industry in terms of ensuring that we are developing it harmoniously with other industries in the region, whether they be land-based or ocean-based, and also how that in and of itself, that education and research piece can be such a huge economic driver. So there was a lot of talk about workforce development and how we need to be kind of preparing for that, not in 5 years or 10 years, right now. So there's a lot of groundwork that we need to be doing right now. A lot of focus at the conference on biodiversity, and ensuring that, if we're making these steps, then how do we protect or maybe even use these opportunities to enhance the biodiversity that exists in our ecosystems here. It was interesting to learn lessons from other regions too about the circular economy, because they've been in this game for a while now. They're already starting to look at that circular economy and, blade recycling technologies, even the composite materials that are used to create them. So some incredible lessons to be learned on that front. And we're so fortunate to be able to have, to develop those relationships to do that. And then, we look around our region and we saw the port infrastructure that exists in other places. We know there's work to do here. The continuous message has been about collaboration, that the industry partners, even when they're competitive, we do need to be working together because we are trying to grow a clean economy and a clean energy system. And really, I believe that the offshore wind piece, the hydrogen piece, it's part of what's driving the fourth industrial revolution around innovation and where it's going to take us in the future, right? And then Tyler talked a lot about supply chain development. So, my biggest goal here is that, the most benefit as possible must land in the Strait area. That's our number one goal, is that we want to make sure that the people here benefit both socially, economically, from the work that's going to be taking place in the future. And so, understanding that benefits optimization is a big piece as well. So lots of really great key takeaways.
The Germany trip was definitely a little bit different. The Win Europe conference or summit, if I were to juxtapose the Germany trip, the Germany trip was really all about a knowledge exchange. So I was so, I feel so fortunate to be invited to join that as not only the mayor of the town of Port Hawkesbury, and I really want to thank Port Hawkesbury Town Council for enabling me and supporting me to attend that trip. But I certainly went with my regional hat on as well, as one of the co-chairs of the Strait Council Offshore Wind Task Force that I co-chair with Warden and Mombourquette. And we have an amazing palette of representation on that task force. Again, similar to what I mentioned with Copenhagen, like all of the stakeholders, but on a local level for our task force. So this knowledge exchange was basically, hey, Canada, we know you have an emerging offshore wind industry. And here in Germany, we're more advanced and we have a much more mature offshore wind industry. Come and learn about what we're doing. So that essentially was what the trip was about. It was very much a knowledge exchange. And it was an opportunity for folks that were part of that delegation from Canada to talk about, okay, how things are emerging here in Canada with regard to the offshore wind, but also what opportunities are there for Canada Germany collaboration, and is there partnership opportunities with regard to securing green hydrogen or offshore wind energy that will help them with their energy needs as well in Germany. So it was really a great opportunity. So we did start in Berlin Then we moved to Hamburg in a different location in Germany and got to talk to lawyers involved with the industry. We got to talk to supply chain entrepreneurs, and we got to talk to just even the folks that make the cables. So for the offshore wind that's cabled in, and rather than having those systems that actually create the green hydrogen on site. It was really interesting just to be able to have all those conversations from not only with the presentations, but also the ability to ask questions and engage in network. And then we actually got to go to Cuxhaven and Torp, the port there in Cuxhaven, to see, this is what a port looks like, which was really cool. And then we went by ferry, and then again another ferry to Hegoland, where there was a flyover of an actual wind park. And so, it was a really great trip. There was so much learning squeezed into those 5 days. So we came back super excited, but also super exhausted, because it was a lot. It was a lot of learning in a short amount of time, and a lot of traveling, a lot of ferries and trains. I did come back, really excited about all that we learned. And it just, I guess, the trip was a very intensive 5 days. And we started off the delegation in Berlin. So that first day we went to the German embassy. We were able to talk to some government officials. We were able to talk to some regulators, and certainly some folks that are subject matter experts, just to give us the overview about what's happening in Germany. And they have created, obviously, a regulatory pathway. They've created an auction system for how they award, the portions of their ocean to be able to secure future existing and future offshore wind projects within their waters. So all of that is really advantageous, to be able to see what their best practices are, to see what their lessons learned were, so we can bring those back with us to Canada and be able to use that as we create the regulatory pathway for offshore wind, and as we kind of figure out how what does that look like, and something that I'm hoping that there is an opportunity to continue that knowledge exchange and have that opportunity to learn a little bit more, because coming back to Canada just left me a little bit more hungry to learn a little bit more about the German experience, was certainly around that engagement piece. So of course, Adam, as a task force, we've been, learning as much as we can about this emerging industry, and trying to understand how can we, as a community, all of the communities in our region, how can we prepare? How can we make sure that all of the benefits that come with this emerging industry, how can we maximize those benefits locally? And also, how can we make sure that we're involved in the process in a way that we are doing it in the very best way from an environmental perspective, ensuring all of the existing industries here, are there synergies? How do we minimize any impact to our existing industries as well? And and at the end of the day, I would love to learn a little bit more about how Germany engaged with their fishers, for example, and how they went about creating that asset mapping piece, where you were making sure that these are the protection area zones where and what would be allowed in the offshore wind parks, in terms of fishing, etc. So these are some really interesting, I guess, things that I would love to learn a little bit more with regard to the Germany experience. So that we can take those back to Canada and really do our best to make sure that consultation piece is very fulsome, inclusive, and at the end of the day, the result is going to be the most informed from the grassroots level.
One thing I do want to pick up on that you mentioned just a moment ago, the idea of local residents being able to benefit from the developments in green hydrogen. And
Yeah.
can I take from that that you're hoping to see that the actual use of wind energy and green hydrogen and green ammonia is going to benefit and contribute to energy consumption here in the Strait area, as opposed to simply being produced and then exported to global markets? Do you see that happening?
Yeah, so I see that local benefit happening on a couple of fronts. We are really interested in building a domestic market. Right now there's not one, frankly. But we want to work with our suppliers and our companies here that have a potential. Are there bus fleets, transit fleets? Are there other ways that we could use the clean fuels that are going to be generated in Point Tupper to be able to benefit the economy and the environment that we live in here, right? And so that's that would be a direct benefit to local users. And when we talk about the vast amounts of electricity that have the potential to be generated by wind, how do we make sure that some of that benefit, that that electricity production is helping our local population as well. But at the end of the day, right now the hydrogen facilities are really focused on an export potential, because they know that that's how we will build the capacity to even get to a domestic opportunity, because domestically we don't have enough demand to make such large scale commercial hydrogen production facilities have the proper return on investment. So combining that export piece is really critical, because it gives them the opportunity to really scale up their operations. And when you think about it, I mean, Port Hawkesbury paper and other formerly New Start, like these are all export facilities, right? And the benefit that's landing in our communities is that they are providing really good paying jobs, and frankly they are helping to keep our tax base down. So if we don't focus on more industrial development in our communities, there's no question, our tax base is going to rise. Costs are rising, just like you face in your household budget and how much it costs now to go to the grocery store. We face the same thing as municipal units. Tenders that we would have put out 2-3 years ago are now coming in 2-3 times as much for basic pieces of work related to even water and sewer improvements, et cetera, right? So we're really focused on trying to maintain affordability for our residents, and the industrial developments in Point Tupper are going to be a huge part of that. The caveat there is that we want to make sure that those industrial developments are not just economically beneficial to our communities, but also environmentally and socially. And so that's why this clean fuels opportunity, it just aligns completely with a lot of the principles that we hold dear to our hearts. We all live here. We all want to work here, and live well and healthily here. So this really hits on a lot of spots that are important to us.
The companies behind the major green hydrogen developments in the Strait in Western Richmond County. So, I mean, we look at Everwind Fuels taking over the former New Star Terminals operation. Obviously, Bearhead Energy, a major player, they're finally getting back on track after having not been able to secure a supply of LNG in their previous iteration, but they're moving forward. And you've mentioned Port Hawkesbury Paper a couple of times now. I think often lost in the shuffle is that there is going to be a small green hydrogen operation at the paper producer as well in Point Tupper. So I want to ask you, and Tyler, Mattheis, I'd like to get your thoughts on this as well. What has communication been like with the representatives of these major industries, particularly Everwind and Bearhead? You've spoken to the likes of Paul McLean and Trent Vichy. What has their communication been like with you and with the Municipal Council in Richmond County?
Oh, so I mean, I'll start, Tyler, you can jump in, but I have to say that, the developers behind both of these projects they've been nothing short of superb when it comes to information sharing. They really see the municipalities and the communities as partners, because we're all in this together. It's been fantastic to see them engage with communities early on. Even when it comes to looking at opportunities for benefits, that would come to our communities in the long term, and they've got agreements with First Nations partners, which is a hugely important piece, so they've really taken that community piece, as part of their core path forward. And I think from the municipality's perspective, the level of communication, I mean, it's been nothing short of, like I said, superb, because we're working on projects together. We're working to make sure that, the resources that are needed are going to be in place. And I think that's really, I won't say it's not, I guess I would say it's not necessarily typical of other large industrial developments that have come along from, or opportunities that have come along from time to time. And we're seeing the investment happening. It's real dollars on the ground in our communities right now. So it's pretty exciting.
The one word that comes to mind is just collaboration. And I think everybody that has an interest, and everybody that sees the comparative advantages of this region, whether they're somebody from industry, whether they're somebody from business, or whether they're a local leader, just everyone is so open-minded and willing to pitch in to, again, make sure that we continue to create an enabling environment for this emerging industry. Just the level of collaboration that's happening between the town of Port Hawkesbury and Richmond County is historic. And these are the kinds of things that are required to create that enabling environment that I mentioned. Just one example would be the Landry Lake Water Utility. So, I mean, that collaboration between our two municipalities will enable that green hydrogen, regardless of the industry player who makes it first across the finishing line. So, I mean, again, what can we do together with the Strait Area Chamber of Commerce? What can we do together with the Cape Breton Partnership? I mean, everybody is going into this, with that in the spirit of collaboration. And I mean, that's exactly where we need to be. We knew that lesson the second the One Nova Scotia report came out. We knew that in order to grow our province, the collaboration needs to be the pinnacle of everything that we do. So my sense is that the atmosphere has definitely been collaborative, and I think that that's going to create a much more sustainable future for us all.
They're taking their position as major players in our community very seriously and very responsibly. We've New Star had a great team, which is largely intact with the new owners of Everwind, and they've invited folks from our team to sit on their community advisory committee. Both major hydrogen projects that are Bearhead and Everwind have established those kinds of committees very early on, far before anything has been really done in terms of turning dirt or getting new equipment. They were very proactive in all the things that I echo what the Warden mentioned there about Indigenous participation and consideration. And also, they've started with the communication, and which was the proper thing to do, and slowly moved into places where they saw themselves playing a role where others couldn't. We're picking up where their predecessor left off in the case of Everwind, sponsoring a charity golf tournament, for instance, and we see them quite active in these ways, but cautious in that they want to hear from folks first before they make big investments in community infrastructure. But of course, those things are very welcome and very needed in the ways that the Warden mentioned in terms of industrial tax base, simply a responsible employer and a large business. They've been nothing but responsive when it comes to being able to pick up the phone on our behalf, both Paul and Trent, but also their team, sure, really have a great relationship. In terms of Port Hawkesbury Paper, they're a longstanding member of our board. Jeff Clark sits on the Cape Breton Partnerships board, and as well as the Cape Breton Regional Enterprise Network, of which that board helped oversee Martin's position in line and the expenditures related to it. we look forward to more conversations because these initial steps have been so positive and so complementary to the mission of the Cape Breton Partnership, and really the community identity of the Strait, which is one of moving forward, investing, and not always being aware, I guess, of the community's needs and aspirations, and also the desire to be a place that welcomes investment, welcomes new ideas, and welcomes growth and prosperity.
Well, let's talk about those next conversations then, and either of you can answer this any way you like. Where do we go from here? Obviously, this is not a file that's sitting still. Construction underway at Everwind with the hope of wrapping up the project in 2025. Bearhead ramping up as well too. So what are the next steps for each of you in terms of continuing those conversations and basically preparing for what happens now in terms of green hydrogen?
First off, as a task force, we have to keep our shoulder to the wheel. We have to keep doing our best to continue to engage our local communities, just to make sure that they're aware of this emerging industry, and so that we are very inclusive in terms of who wants to be a part of our task force. So, for example, we're really interested in getting in front of Antigonish Town and County, and we do have a date that I don't know off the top of my head that we're hoping to go and present to both town and county to let them know what we've been up to, and also to extend that invitation to become a part of the task force. We, in the same regard, we're really interested in getting in front of Inverness County as well. I had the opportunity to chat with Warden Bonnie McIsaac and CAO Keith McDonald as well yesterday. We're hoping to get in front of them as well. And Buckingham First Nation, like I know they're currently looking at elections, and they certainly have a lot going on. With all of the partnerships they have with, I believe, Everwind Fuels. So as that progresses, we hope to have that opportunity to do a reach out with them as well. And really, we want to have a completely open door policy. We like to take our traveling roadshow just to, we got presentations on standby. So we're really eager and open to chatting with any community groups. I know we've chatted with SEPI, we've chatted with Bidaba, we'd love to be able to get in front of any interested groups that might want to learn a little bit more about what we know. And again, we continue to engage with all orders of government. And at the end of the day, I think the key aim for our group is, making sure we're continuing to keep our fingers on the pulse of how things are progressing with regard to regulatory pathway. I mean, that's certainly not, something that we are doing, but we want to definitely keep a close eye on how the things progress from that government level perspective. And also, we have a lot of work to do. Not necessarily a task force job, but Warden Amanda Mombourquette and myself and other leaders and other councils in our region and other chiefs and band councils, we really need to look at, this emerging industry from how do we prepare as a community? And because we know housing is a hot topic. We know isn't it wonderful that we have that kind of demand, that people want to live in our region, and there is a housing crunch, and how do we bridge that gap? How do we house all of the people who want to live in our region? I mean, population growth is a wonderful thing, and isn't it great to be in a position where we are growing? But we do need to work really hard to create that enabling environment for more housing developments and more economic development. We need to continue to kind of lean our shoulder on the wheel of, are we, just keeping in touch with our universities and the NSCC, of course, the Strait Area Campus and Nautical Institute. They're leaning in as well to this emerging opportunity in terms of training workforce. And I think there's also something that the task force is thinking about too, is kind of like, how do we create something in our communities that is kind of like a brick and mortar place for people to learn more. So we would love to be able to establish a center of excellence for offshore wind in this region, so that maybe it's a place of innovation where we're inviting people globally, that are that have that experience in offshore wind and green hydrogen, and and the intricacies of that. Come to Nova Scotia, come to the Strait area, and to come to Cape Breton. And how do we create a destination for innovation for this emerging industry as well? So, I mean, there are so many things, Adam. Like, I feel like, this is such a huge opportunity, and it's so exciting that, that our region gets to participate on this national and international stage in this whole energy paradigm shift. So that movement away from coal, that movement to green renewable energy, and to be able to use our wind, which is currently a stranded asset. And I think in the past, like, the wind probably aggravated everybody. And I know the wind knocks the lights off of the poles at the corner of Reeves and Pitt, I'm sure at least once a year. But now we're like, wow, that wind is a huge asset. It's our future. And isn't that wonderful?
One thing that we've been uniquely able to do, again, with that baseline of support from Richmond County, Port Hawkesbury, and the province of Nova Scotia, but layering on support with other partners in terms of the Net Zero Atlantic, which is funded through the province of Nova Scotia and through the federal government and their new environmental assessment agency. And so through funding from those, we've started a green energy engagement program, which we've had preliminary work. The idea there is that as these regulations are being built out, which are fairly complex, and I won't go into specifics here, but people are welcome to go to our website or find more about it. There's people's concerns that the warden raised. We want to have ecological concerns absolutely discussed and mitigated, and maybe even eliminated if at all possible. Economic concerns of important industries such as fishery or such as tourism, and people's livelihoods. So with our program, we've had the good fortune of bringing on a staff person who's ensuring the communication of those various cycles of public engagement sessions or surveys, webinars are made available to as many people as possible, and the nuances described, and so that communities can have the best information. These conversations, we feel like this is extremely important. It's extremely important for all sides of this conversation. For those who seek to invest in this exciting new industry, for those who have concerns about how it might affect their life or their livelihood, and for those of us who are just kind of curious about what is this thing. It is 30 years old, but that doesn't mean it was 30 years here, and everybody recognizes that. And how does this affect climate change and our response to it? And what is when we look at the cost of inaction globally, how does that stack up with potentially some of the costs of action locally? And we need to fairly discuss those things. We have the benefit of seeing what other places have done, avoid some of those pitfalls. We also have the benefit of seeing what continuing on our path, both locally and globally, may have on these important industries that we have here. We certainly want to see a sustainable fishery moving forward, both from an ocean that can support these fish and from other complementary industries such as offshore wind. And so we're very excited we have great partners in these ways, both Indigenous, UINRI, neglected to mention, is also an important player as First Nations have a critical role in this discussion and in the next steps we take as a community, as a province, as a region and a nation. And then, of course, we have things like the United Nations goals for greenhouse gas reductions, of which offshore wind is a major industry that those successes relies upon.
Yeah.
All right, certainly a lot of moving parts there. Warden Mombourquette, would you like to chip in on this as well too? Where do we go from here? And acknowledging as well that green hydrogen is certainly not the only form of wind energy. And as the co-chair of the Offshore Wind Task Force, I imagine you're looking at the wider picture as well too. But what's your sense on the next steps in terms of all of this?
Yeah, so it's something that we talk a lot about at our offshore wind task force table. I think one of the things that we need to tackle as a municipality, as a group of municipalities and community partners, is ensuring that we are providing as much clarity as possible. There really is still a lot of confusion in the community around what does the wind have to do with the hydrogen piece? And, is there going to be wind farms here? Is there going to, so there really is a lot of confusion around it. And, I think part of our job is to help to clear up some of that confusion. So we know we have several offshore wind developers who are interested in the region. They are independent private sector companies who hopefully, will work with communities and government to make sure that they develop responsible offshore wind projects. Those offshore wind projects will feed, either the hydrogen production facilities directly or the grid. They're looking at options around that. The reason hydrogen production needs the wind, both onshore and offshore, is because they need to make sure that the hydrogen they're producing is green hydrogen. So that means it has to be produced with, from a renewable resource, either solar or wind. And certainly we have a lot more wind than sun here these days. Yes. But hopefully, I'm glad to see the sun this week. But certainly the wind is a constant, and we can even see anecdotally that it is getting more and more gaining in strength over time, right? So that clean energy of the wind will feed the green hydrogen production facilities. That's what there's a market for. We don't want to be creating, more uses of fossil fuels. So as we kind of move away from that, and we are home to the Point Tupper generating station, we need to make sure that we have a plan for our own energy security future, that we have a plan for the people who work in that sector, that they have good opportunities to transition to. So there's a lot of moving parts, but I think providing clarity as much as we can is a big piece of it. The bottom line is, though, there's a lot we don't know yet, right? So, the provincial government has not issued any seabed licenses. They're still developing their offshore wind, pathway. They're still developing their green hydrogen action plan. Those pieces are very much still draft. And, and I think it's going to have to evolve as we learn more about what's the right fit for Nova Scotia and what's the right fit specifically for the Strait region. Now, I think, no secret to anybody, the Strait of Canso is, the deepest ice-free port on the eastern seaboard of North America, and it presents us with a massive opportunity that we've been working to develop for a very long time. And we're very fortunate to have the heavy industrial park sitting right along its water's edge, with very deep waters at the dockside, at the marine terminals. So I think we have a lot to look forward to, but we need to be continuing to make sure we provide clarity to the public as much as we can, that we are working with levels of government to advocate for the development of the Strait of Canso. And that we're continuing to engage our communities. So, one of the things that makes the Offshore Wind Task Force so powerful, I think, as a voice for this industry, is because it includes everybody. It includes municipal voices, it includes Indigenous voices, it includes fisheries voices, it includes developers, everybody that has a stake is at the table. And what that allows us to do is kind of benefit from the brain trust that we have there, to work our way through solutions, to decide on what are pieces of information that we need to learn more about, what are pieces of advocacy that we need to be doing, and how it's helping us shape what we want this to look like in our region. So lots to do in the future, but we've come a long way. And as always, I'm telling people, I think it's safe to be cautiously optimistic about all of this, because the stars seem to be aligning for us. And, what an opportunity for us to be not only, participants in securing our own energy future, but in, being part of a global solution to the climate emergency that we live in right now. It's pretty exciting.
Well, we at Telile Community Television are very grateful to the two of you for joining us and offering all this perspective about the green hydrogen developments that are happening here. We will leave it at that, but thank you so much, Warden Amanda Mombourquette of Richmond County and Tyler Mattheis, the CEO of the Cape Breton Partnership. Thank you for joining me on Telile today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Adam.
Thanks, Adam.
And just before we wrap up this week's edition of Telile 24/7, here's an update on the Destination Reeves Street pilot project that has dramatically reshaped Port Hawkesbury's main thoroughfare over the past 4 years. At the latest regular monthly meeting of Port Hawkesbury Town Council earlier this month, some elected officials were concerned that the provincial government, specifically the Department of Public Works, hasn't responded to town inquiries about the future of the project for several months. One town councillor pointed out that the last correspondence sent by Port Hawkesbury CAO Terry Doyle back in June still hasn't received a response from the provincial government, and another councillor noted that a municipal provincial committee that was set up to overlook Destination Reeves Street hasn't gotten together in the past 18 months. So I thought I'd bring the question to Mayor Brenda Chisholm-Beaton during our conversations for the green hydrogen panel that you just saw. Here's what the Port Hawkesbury Mayor has to say about the delays in correspondence from the Department of Public Works and the future of Destination Reeves Street. Delays in the Provincial Department of Public Works responding to outreach from the CAO Terry Doyle, some of the other councillors saying that it may be just as well to go ahead and make the contact themselves. Your thoughts on the delays that have been happening in terms of communication, but also on this drive by your fellow elected officials to reach out themselves and try to get some answers on the Reeves Street redesign?
Sure. So, certainly we've had a history with regard to the Reeves Street, and of course, just to start off the conversation, and I'm sure many people are aware, but for those folks who are not aware, or may believe that Reeves Street is actually a street that belongs or is serviced by the town, that would be incorrect. And I know that some people do assume that Reeves Street does belong to the town. Reeves Street is actually a provincial asset, transportation asset. So back to last term, when the Destination Reeves Street project came to be, as a concept, with lots of community consultation and engagement with the province with regard to the road redesign was just one element of Destination Reeves Street, which basically took a 4-lane roadway and created a left turning lane system with one lane on each going in each direction. And the whole idea behind that redesign was to create a safer left turning system for drivers, and also to let the prudent driver control that speed, so that if somebody is driving 50 kilometers an hour, which is the speed through town, you can't go any faster than the person who's driving in front of you. And what we had before was basically an Indy speedway, because we had 4 lanes and there were people weaving in and out, trying to get as quick and as fast from once they pass the NSCC to get to the set of lights to make that turn at Trunk 4. And we needed to, the traffic concerns at that time, and again, this is just one little part of Destination Reeves Street, was to make Reeves Street a much safer, more accessible road for all the users, because the roads are not just for vehicles. The roads are for pedestrians. The roads are for people who have mobility challenges. The roads are for people who are running or pushing strollers. The road is for everyone. The road is for transit. So how do we take Reeves Street and design it so that it's actually a road for everyone? So the whole redesign was framed as a pilot. And of course, COVID happened, Adam.
Yes.
And then that pilot became skewed because Now we weren't faced with an appropriate amount of traffic to really test that redesign. So again, that project pilot, was extended to be able to kind of get us past COVID to better understand, once we have regular traffic flow, how does this redesign work? So in my mind, yes, it seems to have gone over what the anticipated envelope of time should be. And I do understand that there has been a little bit of a challenge from Public Works with the province in terms of turnover. Our file kind of got shuffled along to another person. So I mean, there are other delays with that regard, and I understand, delays, and I understand, of course, council wanting to see this pilot, kind of come to the point where a decision can be made and come to a point where council can hear from the province so that we can understand a very data-driven outcome of this design. So, did it reduce the speeding? Did it reduce the number of accidents? Did it reduce the severity of the accidents? And do we have a safer street as a result of this redesign? Because right now it seems to be kind of in limbo. And I think at the end of the day, council would really kind of appreciate having all of that information. And again, at the end of the day, it's not the town's decision, it's the province's decision because it is their road. But it would be really nice for the province to be able to kind of, bridge that delay, so to speak, and let council know, okay, what's all the data, what have you decided with regard to this pilot? And we also, I guess, this wasn't brought up at the meeting, but this is just my own perception of it. We also want to create new active transportation along Reeves Street that is predicated on the result of this pilot project. So if the pilot project does go forward, it's going to change the perimeter and the width of what Reeves Street will be. And that gives us a little bit more real estate to be able to put in wider active multi-functional active transportation, similar to what folks see coming from NSCC going to the corner of Pitt Street and Reeves Street, so that it's multi-use, whether you're walking, pushing a stroller, on rollerblades, in a wheelchair. It's and it definitely, we're seeing more people walking around town. We're seeing people enjoying a much more happy, healthy, active lifestyle. We want to make sure the town is fully connected in a multimodal way. And I really would love to see some resolve with regard to this pilot project so that we can move forward, making Port Hawkesbury the most walkable, inclusive, accessible, connected town in Nova Scotia. So anyway, all in all, it is a good story. We just want to, we want to kind of get it to the last chapter.
And there you have it. That wraps up this week's edition of Telile 24/7. Thank you for tuning in, and a special thank you to the participants in our green hydrogen panel on this week's show: Port Hawkesbury Mayor Brenda Chisholm-Beaton, Richmond Warden Amanda Mombourquette, and the CEO of the Cape Breton Partnership, Tyler Mattheis. If you have any thoughts about what you've heard over the past hour here on Telile 24/7, or just some suggestions for future editions of the show, I'd love to hear them. You can contact me directly. My phone number is 902-625-8863, and you can reach me by email using the address adamjrcook, cook with an E, @gmail.com. You can also contact Telile Community Television directly with your ideas and your comments. The station phone number in Arichat is 902-226-1928, and the best email address to use is telile@telile.tv. Don't forget to follow Telile on social media. We're on X, formerly Twitter, as well as Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And our YouTube channel features every single episode of Telile 24/7, including this one, As well as individual segments and interviews from our shows, we offer the same service for our sister program, Roundtable, and be sure to check out the newest French language journalism being produced by the latest addition to the Telile News team, Jacqueline Giroir. For now, I'm Adam Cook. Thank you once again for joining me for this special edition of Telile 24/7. I look forward to seeing you again next week with a brand new show. Bye for now.